Well, hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well.
All right, well, let's start out by just telling us a little bit about yourself. What's your major? What's your school?
All right, I am an industrial design major here at LTU. I'm going into my senior year, so I'll be graduating in the spring of 2021. I am originally from the northern suburbs of Chicago, specifically a town called Libertyville. Yeah, I just grew up there, and it's a nice place to grow up. My parents actually moved to the city after I graduated high school, so whenever I go home now, I actually go home to the city of Chicago. So it's kind of interesting to sort of be from both places. And really, when anyone asks specifically, I'm from Chicago, really, unless I get in depth like this.
That's really exciting. Do you think that influenced why you decided to choose your field?
um, yeah, maybe not in the most pleasant way, but yeah, I was always a creative kid, and I mean it's very supportive, very good high school for supporting the fine arts and stuff. But it was really like I kind of looked around, and a lot of people just a very nice suburb, so like normal jobs, like everyone kind of had these like there are very few people people that I ended up befriending, but people kind of had interesting careers. Um, so I'd say that I kind of saw what a lot of people did around me, and even like with my parents, like my personality type is very different from them. So I kind of looked at what they did for jobs and was like, that's maybe not what I want to do. So I was a really kind of hyperactive kid. I wasn't terrible in school, but I just was never comfortable in school. Wasn't really good at anything academically speaking. So when I kind of fell into sort of the creative world in high school, like I did a lot of theater, did a lot of music, which is really where that sort of started. And then I ended up finding industrial design, and that's kind of my thing now.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying what you're working on. So your piece got selected for Amateur Hour. Can you tell us a little bit about your piece?
Yeah, it's had a very interesting lifespan. It started out as the first project I did last year. So basically fall of 2019 semester, you have in industrial design 6, you have two projects that take 8 weeks apiece. And so the brief for this project was to design a communication device. So I got to my conclusion in a kind of really roundabout way. I am a huge music fan, kind of like I'm an enormous music fan, and I really like ambient music, which is kind of like a weird sort of subgenre, and it kind of has like sort of a cult following. You either like it or you don't like it. And Brian Eno is sort of the father of that sort of music, and I really want to design a piece sort of based on that because there's a lot of the way he wrote about kind of creating ambient music. He's one of the first guys to call it that, what he was doing, and his basically quotes on like what I want to sort of create through these pieces was he wants to induce calm and a space to think through his music. And then he said ambient music it should accommodate any level of listening attention without enforcing one in particular. So I wanted to create sort of a communication device that people could like promote, like you sort of a communication within yourself, your thought process, and apply that to super crowded spaces. So the first thing that Brian Eno ever called ambient music was a project called Music for Airports. It was literally just he wanted to make music for airports that wasn't distracting, that if you wanted to listen to it and sort of calm down and think about it, you could, but also could just be on in the background. So this started as lights, like a large scale lights that would be put into airports that people could sort of relax by, or they could really just walk by it and they could have a sort of private moment with it. They're large. I mean, you've seen them, they're quite tall. So there's a series of a couple different designs of them. And I wanted to be able to have people sort of relax there if they wanted to, or sort of just walk by and just have a nice experience. So I did that for that sort of 8-week project. And I made a quick prototype out of PVC pipe that I heated up with sand. Like if you get sand really hot and you pour it inside of a PVC pipe, you can bend it in any way you want, because I didn't have enough time to get into the metal shop. So I just kind of made it out of PVC and strung some LED lights inside of it. But there was an open call for the Dish Design Gallery in December that was run both by Foreman Seek, which is a studio that is based out of here in Michigan, and Studio Radish, that is a fabrication and design shop here in Detroit. They're really awesome. And I applied with the design, and it was picked for the exhibition, and Studio Radish manufactured it. But they did something really cool too. It was more of a design collaboration than just having my piece manufactured. Originally, I had designed these pieces like they were metal all around. They were a little kind of cold too, and they decided to put wood bases on it, and it gives it a really nice human touch to the design that instead of it being manufactured like I originally intended, which was like super large scale, like factory size, they were able to take this sort of handmade style and provide a lot more care to it with the materials. And it was just really interesting now, kind of the result is essentially a design collaboration between myself and Studio Radish. And it's been ongoing. That's why it's different. Actually, it was a little bit in the dish exhibition because we kind of keep tweaking things and going back to things. And it's been a really awesome collaboration with them to produce these pieces.
Dang, that's really impressive.
Yeah, and this piece too is very near and dear to my heart because it's actually the first pieces of mine that were ever made in like a professional way in industrial design. Like we just make these. Usually for me, I'm not the greatest prototype maker. I would consider my skill set to be like more on the front end of like sort of the creation, the understanding how things work a little bit. That's sort of earlier in the design process. But when it comes to actually physically making things, I can do it. I'm not great at it. And so to have people that's like their specialty sort of work with that, they really understand how to make something real. That was really special to me. And it's something that, and especially just the whole emotional connection I have with the lights and the idea that just like I was able to bring my appreciation of music and do a physical thing. It's the first lighting project I've ever done. It's the largest project I have done up into that point. So there's a lot of emotional connections to me too with the piece. So it's really awesome to kind of see them again.
So you said you're not big on prototyping, but you made your original prototype out of sand?
No, so this is an interesting process. If you get PVC pipes, like you can get them in certain diameters, and you have to get, I experimented a lot with this. You have to get ones with thinner walls. So you want PVC piping with thin walls. The PVC pipes I used were, I think, a ½ inch thick with like really maybe 1/8 of an inch thick walls. And what you do is you get a hot plate and you take a pot and you fill it with sand and you heat it up really, really, really hot. And then you pour it into the open PVC pipe. I put duct tape on the bottom. So it just kind of fills up, and you have to do a little bit of figuring out to understand how much of the pipe it's going to fill up. And then you let it sit for like 30 seconds, and then you by hand bend it. You obviously have to wear gloves and everything, but that's how I created the original prototypes as sort of a proof of concept. They weren't amazing. They're nothing like Studio Radish's that built it. So they got it a lot closer to the intention, but it was really just a proof of concept of like, these things can be 8 feet tall, they can stand up. And this is what kind of the general idea of what a light would look like. Because it was a shorter project. It was like an 8-week project, and we only had 2 weeks for prototyping. And throughout the whole year, my prototyping skills got better. This was the first project of my junior year. So it was a lot of figuring things out, but it definitely helped me when it came to actually getting them built by someone else. I was like, oh, I know how this actually would work, even though this isn't the actual final result I want. It's almost like kind of handing someone like a sketch. You're like, it should work like this, it should look like this, but this isn't the final form of what it should be.
So you said that you learned a lot about prototyping. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned from this whole project?
Man, I learned a lot from this project. It was the first project under a new professor. So that was definitely interesting too, just understanding that. It was, I really don't know if I can put my finger on the specific things I learned. I definitely learned how to work with PVC, which was a skill I did not have before at all. And I learned a lot too about how to plan. This was the first project that I really took, I planned it out. But that was sort of a requirement from the professor too, which was really good. That was like, all right, we have to spend this much time each week doing a certain task. And I really learned a lot about like, all right, you got to really be good at planning if you want things to go well. And you really have to plan in time for things to go wrong. And thankfully I did, because, as any person who builds anything for the first time knows, that it's not going to go right the first time. It's going to go wrong.
Well, if you were going to do it again, how would you do it next time?
I think I would just basically have a space in the shop to do it, or I would do it somewhere where like with a hard surface floor. I did it on carpet. I did get a tarp though, so I wasn't like completely annoying, but I think that I would have just planned out. I would have spent more time prototyping. I think I spent a lot of time on like the front end of like a sketching, modeling, but then I didn't spend enough time at the final end of the project. But really, that time now has been spent collaborating with Studio Radish since then to make them to this final form that you're going to see in the show, which is really fantastic.
So you said that the prototypes could have been 8 feet tall. Are they going to be 8 feet tall in the show?
Yes. Yes, they are tall. They might be a little bit short. Well, there's 2 of them. So I ended up designing 4 lights for the original series. That was really it kind of ended up in CAD was the final form. And then I made 2 prototypes, 2 of the smaller ones out of PVC. So one is like about 5 feet tall, and it's like 3-4 feet wide. It kind of looks like a cactus. I took a lot of inspiration from sort of plants. I like to go to conservatories a lot. Garfield Park Conservatory in Chicago, the Lincoln Park Conservatory in Chicago is very good, and then obviously the Belle Isle Conservatory here in Detroit is kind of really nice. And I had been sort of visiting those a lot the summer prior to creating this, so those sort of forms were in my mind. Yeah, one of them is like 8 feet tall, and the other one is about 5 feet tall. So they're tall, and then actually the other ones that were not fabricated are like taller. Like one is 12 feet tall, and then another one is 8 feet tall.
So was the height so that it would be out of the view so that people could focus on it if they wanted to?
Yes, and they're made to be big enough so that it kind of separates you from the hustle and bustle of the airport. Because really, when I was creating the sort of use case for this, I obviously was inspired by Brian Eno's use of an airport for his ambient one. That it really is the perfect place of where you're so busy and you can't really think straight. There's so much stuff going on that the big physical piece also that has the space for a big physical piece to be put in. That's kind of how it got to that height. I wouldn't say there was a specific reason going in there. A lot of this project was me learning a lot and sort of coming upon something instead of like, it's going to be this tall, it's going to be this, and it's going to be put here. It sort of just kind of happened very organically throughout the process.
That's really creative. So you spent a lot of time on this project, and if you're going to be able to spend so many hours on something, you got to have at least a little part of it that you like. What is your favorite thing about what you do and why?
For my project, really, it was just that I got to really sort of do this inspired by music that I love, that like really I enjoy and listen to quite often. So it was really nice to be able to bring like a huge passion of mine into another passion of mine. So that was really nice to like, sort of combine those things. And then really for industrial design, like my favorite thing about it is that when you do it professionally, you really have an impact on people's lives day to day. Like the things that you use, the things all around you, someone designed that. And it's sort of this really engaging hidden world to me that you can have an impact on someone's life and I never even knew about it. I really enjoy that. Also, it's just you have to have such a variety of skills. You're always working on something new within the design world that it's just it's something that keeps me constantly engaged. I'm someone who needs to sort of bounce around from thing to thing, and it's a field that really lets you do that.
Well, that sounds like a great job. Much better than the 9-to-5 jobs from Chicago. So I think we're ending our interview about now. How can people find you outside of the show?
Okay, so my social media, if you want to check out my Instagram, I put a lot of design work there. It is at apagrocky, all lowercase, A-P-A-G Rocky. And then my website is alessandropagura.com. So ALESSANDROPAGURA.com.
Right. Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to that really inspired your work?
Well, obviously, shout out to Brian Eno. He's one of the coolest people. But I mean, a huge shout out to Studio Radish. If you want to check out their Instagram, they're at studio_radish. So it's studio_RADISH. And then their website is radish, so RADISH.farm.
All right. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you for interviewing me. I'm excited about the show.